Today's lecture is about a poem that is included in the syllabus of first year English literature. Name of the poem is The Ice Cart. This is written by Wilfred Gibson and presentation is by Shafakus Sahar. The Ice Cart is a poem about imagination, city life and importance of fantasy. As all of us know that the poets do not prefer city life to the life in the country. They like the sea, the jungles, the mountains, the wild places much more than the urban lifestyle. A poet who is living in a city would not be happy, especially a poet who is writing in a romantic vein. He would like to have a jungle, a valley, or some wild and beautiful place instead. But obviously, every poet does not afford to live in the countryside. Some of them are stuck in the city, and if they have to live in the city, they would like to use imagination to escape the ugliness of city life. Our poet Wilfred Wilson Gibson was born in England at Hexham, Northumberland. He attended many local schools, but he never went to a university. He was 11 years old when he had started writing poetry, and after some time it became his full-time occupation. His early work is in romantic tradition, but after 1905 and 6, he was completely changed. He developed a social conscience and he began writing about ordinary people in ordinary language. Also, these were the stories of life among rural and urban poor. So he started writing about the poor people and their lives instead of writing about just beautiful things. And he is one of the earliest poets to start writing in this way. He was very well-known poet. He was a friend of Rupert Brooke, who was a very famous war poet, and all his poems become simpler and simpler as his life passes. The poem starts here. Perched on my city office stool, I watched with envy while a cool and lucky carter handled ice. The poet or the protagonist is sitting on a stool. He is inside a city. Most probably the city is London. And London, mostly the places where the offices are not very beautifully managed. So it would not be a very beautiful place. And the poet is sitting in an office. Maybe he works in an office and he has to sit actively there or do some work as well. So he is sitting on a stool and he is looking with envy, with jealousy, looking at a person who is a carter, a man with a cart. A cart is a carriage that is run by a horse, and the carter he is called Lucky. The two words envy and lucky tell us that the poet does not want to be where he is and he would like to be somewhere else. And according to him, the man with the cart is lucky. Now, why is he lucky? We should see. Because he is handling ice. The poet is sitting in heat and he doesn't like heat at all. When he sees that there is a carter who is putting ice in his cart, looking at the ice, he feels that the carter is luckier than the poet himself. I was wandering in a trice far from the grey and grimy heat of that intolerable street. So the poet suddenly feels as he is transformed. He is no longer sitting on a stool, the stool that is put in an office. The office is in a place that is grey, colorless, dull and dirty and also very hot. So the colors of grey, the idea that the place is grimy or dirty, and the talking about heat, we see that these are the three things that make his office a place intolerable for him. That means that he cannot tolerate, he cannot stand sitting at that place that is ugly and dirty and hot. And suddenly when he starts looking at ice, he feels like he is no longer sitting at that disliked place. Now he is somewhere else, and where he is now? Over sapphire berg and emerald flow, beneath the still cold ruby glow of everlasting polar night, bewildered by the queer half light, and he feels as if he is suddenly transformed to North Pole or South Pole. And there he sees some things that are made of snow. One is an iceberg and it is sapphire. That means that it looks like a sapphire, that is a precious stone of very vivid blue color. So the iceberg is blue and emerald flow. Flow means a piece of ice that is floating on water, and that piece of ice is green in color, beautiful vivid green, so green that it looks like the gemstone emerald that is called zamurrad in Urdu. Beneath the still cold ruby glow, and the sky is still, it is cold and it is ruby in color. The sky is red in color, a beautiful pleasant red that is pinkish in shine, of everlasting polar night. Everlasting. All of us know that in the poles the night is of 6 months. So this 6 months night is not totally dark, and the sky is filled with very beautiful colors that are called northern lights, aurora borealis too. So the sky is filled with pink lights, and in front of that sky there are blue icebergs and green colored ice. So this is a very colorful and very pretty scene. Bewildered by the queer half light, the poet is confused because there is a strange sort of half light there, neither night nor day, a middle sort of twilight. Until I stumbled unawares. Then, when he is walking by, not very steadily, he sees something. Upon a creek were big white bears. He sees that there is sea come into the land for a long place, and there are big white polar bears there. As you have seen in the pictures too, that the polar bears are extremely white in look and they are very beautiful. Although they are dangerous animals, but they are extremely lovely when they are standing in front of the blue backgrounds of the polar nights. And what the bears were doing? Plunged headlong down with flourished heels. The bears are jumping into the water with their heads down and their heels up, and floundered, and they do not drown obviously. They start floating over water after some time, after shining seals, and they are going after another animal that is called sea lion, and the short word for the sea lion is seal. Shining seals because seal has no fur on her body and it is like a fish, slippery, shiny and beautiful, through shivering seas of blinding blue. Now the whole scene is beautifully blue because the sea looks extremely dark blue in that half light, and in that half light bears and seals are playing along, which is a very pretty scene. As I watched them, I knew I had stripped and I was swimming too. The poet says that when I saw those animals having fun in the water, I could not stop myself. So I took off my clothes and I jumped into the water as well. Among the seal pack young and hale, and thrusting on with threshing tail, with twist and twirl and sudden leap, through crackling ice and salty deep. The poet jumps into the water and he is swimming among the seals around him. The seal always are in a pack. There is never a lonely seal there. So as in the picture you can see that there are many seals in front of very blue water, and they are jumping around and they are swimming, their tails are moving, they twist, they go here and there and they jump. They are constantly in movement. The ice is crackling. You know, when you take ice out of your fridge, there is always a crackling sound because it cracks and also makes a sound when it is confronted by hot air. In the same way, the ice is crackling there. Salty deep mean that the water of the sea that is saltish and it is very deep. Diving and doubling with my kind until at last we left behind. So diving and doubling with my kind. Poet says that the seals are my type. They are my family. They are my kind. because seals are harmless as I am harmless. And he is swimming with them until finally they left behind what? Those big white blundering bulks of death. Big white blundering bulks of death means the polar bears who were trying to eat the seals up, those are left behind. The seals have saved their lives and they are much ahead of them now. They are safe, they are no longer going to die. We see that the poet has here matched himself with seals because these are the innocent animals. He does not match himself with polar bears because they are hunters. They are there to kill other creatures, and the poets never like killing the other creatures. That is why he would not join himself with bears but would like to say that he is one of the clan of the seals. And lay at length with panting breath upon a far untravelled floe beneath a gentle drift of snow. The poet and the seals are now lying down. They are lying and they are breathing hard because they had to swim very fast to avoid the polar bears. Now they are on a far untravelled floe. They are on a sheet of ice where there is no enemy, no human being, no one can reach. A place where only the seals and the poet are. Beneath a gentle drift of snow, and slowly the snow starts falling from the sky. Snow drifting gently, fine and white. The snow is falling slowly. It is fine and white in color. Out of the endless polar night, the long 6 months night of the polar regions is closing over them. Falling and falling evermore, the snow is falling continuously upon that far untravelled shore, and the snow is covering that untravelled shore where no one else has ever come, only the poet and his friend seals are there. Till I was buried fathoms deep. The poet feels as the snow is falling over him, covering him, and it is not a malignant or bad presence. The snow feels soothing and lovely to him, as if the snow is getting him to sleep. Beneath that cold, white, drifting sleep, sleep drifting deep, deep drifting sleep. The repetition of sleep and deep shows that the poet is slowly slipping into a sort of sleep. He is going to lose his consciousness. He is feeling so happy, so serene, so calm, so protected that he feels like he is sleeping, and all the strain of the real life has gone from him totally. But then suddenly, the carter cracked a sudden whip. Man with the cart has a whip because he is also having a horse or two horses. He is using those horses to run the cart. So he cracks a whip suddenly and there is a sharp sound in the air. I clutched the stool with startled grip. The poet says that I suddenly came into myself. I remembered that I am not swimming with seals in polar regions. I am sitting in my city office on a stool where I have work to do. So with startled grip, that means that he was suddenly shocked and he caught the stool firmly and he was terribly afraid that he might fall. Awakening to the grimy heat, the poet woke up from his fantasy, from his imagination, and he found out that he is still in the same place, dirty place, that ugly place, that hot place, of that intolerable street, and the street where he was sitting that was intolerable. The repetition of intolerable street tells a lot about the thinking of the poet, that he believes that city life is horrible, it is not tolerable, you cannot stay in a city happily, and no one would stay in a city if they could help it. So the suddenness of his coming back tells us another story, and further we shall discuss it with the comparison to John Keats, who seems to drift back to reality instead of suddenly being startled by it. Comparison with Ode to Nightingale by John Keats. In the poem of John Keats, he hears the song of a nightingale, And Keats is lying down on bed. He's very sick and he is suffering a lot because of fever. But when he hears the song of the nightingale, he forgets everything and he is transported from his sick bed to the ancient times when the same bird made sounds in the gardens of kings and queens and princesses. Then he remembers many fairy tales that mention the nightingale and some old poetry lines too. But when Keats here thinks about a word forlorn, he is reminded of reality. He remembers that he is sick, he is on bed, he is going to die after some time because of tuberculosis, and the reality comes over him. But when he says that the forlorn has brought him back, his way is totally different from our poet here. Keats would say, forlorn the very word is like a bell to toll me back from thee to my soul's self. He says to the nightingale that word forlorn suddenly reminded me that I am alone and I am sick and you are not a reality. But what happens here in contrast, the poet here is unpleasantly pulled back to a harsher reality by the sound of the whip. Whip sound is very sharp, very loud, so sudden that the poet is simply he is pulled back from his beautiful dream and he goes back to his dirty office. Here we see that whip is a symbol of slavery because the animals are frightened by a whip. So whip here is the symbol of that slavery that the inmates of the city are bound to. When you live in a city, you have to go with the civilization. You have to go to the schools and offices and everywhere you don't want to go. So city life is slavery, and the poet says that that symbol of slavery brought him suddenly back from his beautiful dream. Here we see a polar bear and we see that polar bear is not only a beautiful animal but also a predator. In the same way, city life seems to be very favorable for some people, but it kills the music in you, the poetry in you, and also it puts a strain on human beings. This poem is mostly about the power of imagination, that how imagination can take you from one place to another, a prettier place, a pleasanter place. But this poem is also an unpleasant reminder that you have to come back from imagination. And when you come back, you see that the reality is all there, it is not gone anywhere else. Thanks for watching. Best of